Welcome back. Now more from our utopia.
A recent study by Headwaters Economics called Grand Staircase-Escalante National Monument, a summary of economic performance in the surrounding communities, backs up the observations from Blake about her community. From 1996 to 2008, in the Grand Staircase-Escalante region, population grew by 8%. Real personal income grew by 40%. Jobs grew by 38%. And also from 1996 to 2008, in the Grand Staircase-Escalante region, real per capita income grew from $23,698 to $30,701, a 30% increase. The conclusion of the study, quote, Western counties with protected public lands like national monuments have been more successful at attracting fast-growing economic sectors and, as a result, grow more quickly, on average, than counties without protected public lands. In addition, protected natural amenities, such as the pristine scenery found at Grand Staircase-Escalante, also help sustain property values and attract new investment. End quote. So the question is raised, what is the motivation? What is their plan?
Well, one side of the argument is that it'll still be public land, and so it likely won't have a major impact. Well, then I think that brings up the question of why bother? It is easier to dispose of non-monument public land, and I think that the entire issue of public lands in the West is heading toward state takeover, which is likely to head toward corporate takeover.
To reiterate Dave's point, one of the theories as to why Utah's politicians want the monument reduced is to gain control. State officials are upset that more than 65% of Utah land is federally owned and managed. They believe that shrinking the designation of Grand Staircase-Escalante National Monument takes it one step closer to state control of federally owned lands.
As far as new mines and oil wells and all these things going in, as a geologist, I don't see the economics of that, so it's kind of a lie to get people's hopes up that they'll get jobs in those industries. I don't think that they exist in this day and age. The uranium deposits have never been economic, but there's this wish that we could get a big job in a mine. But I don't think that's a reality.
Jobs in the coal industry are disappearing, not because of regulation or because of the designation of national monuments, but because the world market for coal has greatly diminished in recent years. The invisible hand of the free market that Republicans so often like to worship is the reason coal is not profitable anymore.
If the monument status is lifted or minimized, then that opens up those BLM lands that are now currently protected for extractive industries. So oil, gas, coal, I've heard talk of some carbon fiber that was found out in the Kaiparowits. Those things are not compatible with tourism.
Not only are jobs in coal, oil, and gas not likely in this area, the idea of a state takeover of federal lands also eliminates one of the most reliable job sectors in the state, the management of federal lands.
Currently, public land management of approximately 31 million acres in Utah that are maintained and administered by the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management establish over 2,000 jobs. That industry, the administration of those lands, is a $250+ million industry in Utah. Those dollars are imported into our economy. It's a basic industry. if we take it over as a state, the taxpayers of Utah will bear the burden of public land management cost.
So not only is the designation of national monuments like Grand Staircase-Escalante and Bears Ears good at stimulating and diversifying the local economy, it brings federal dollars into the state. Why would state officials want to turn an asset into a liability?
We had a town meeting not long ago where we questioned the resolution that was being put forth by the Garfield County Commissioners to downsize the monument. And that resolution was a lot of misrepresentation, outright lies, inaccurate in many ways. And we tried to point out that they really should get it straight before voting on something.
You know, I've talked to a lot of different people from the aides to the governor to our county commissioners, of course, to try to understand what's behind all of this. And I haven't really, none of it totally lines up.
We've asked for a map showing where they would like the monument boundaries to be. They won't share that with us. The letters that I've written to them, few are answered. There's one commissioner that's kind enough to reply. You try to bring up, well, what are the other economic what are other economic opportunities in this county? And they just default to their script, which is, well, we've got all this coal, but with present prices of coal and the abundance of natural gas as a better fuel, it's unlikely that coal mines will develop here. And so there aren't going to be a bunch of jobs that we get from this. So you say, well, what is your overall plan? And they simply won't tell us. And when we try to have a rational discussion with them, they are obviously not interested in listening to us, sadly.
No maps? A person voted into political office who wants to change the boundaries and is voting on this change cannot show a single map to illustrate their desires, and they won't tell the public what they plan on doing with the non-monument land. There are no arguments put forth other than generalized, nonsensical talking points.
So far, I have not seen any maps of what is going to be reduced and what's going to remain in the proposal to shrink the size of the national monument. It would be nice to know what we're talking about before we make a final decision. If the monument is reduced, are we cutting out areas that are critical as part of the character of the monument?
In the final analysis, I think we'll see that this whole exercise right now is actually, unfortunately, sadly, more about culture wars than it is actually about economics or even the historic uses of this land. I'm afraid that what I was told by our county commissioner was that this effort to rescind or minimize the monument ultimately is about fixing a perceived wrong that happened in 1996 when President Bill Clinton designated Grand Staircase-Escalante National Monument.
If the monument is shrunk, then it's the great unknown, I guess. You don't know what could happen. I'd say, for one thing, we would lose our reputation as a destination. You know, I've seen in high country news that people say, well, if Utah is going to be playing hardball and trying to eliminate these national treasures like the Grand Staircase-Escalante National Monument, then maybe we just won't come to Utah. And so, you know, that remains to be seen how many tourists will say, we'll go elsewhere where they appreciate their public lands.
In 2017, just weeks after Governor Gary Herbert signed the resolution urging President Donald Trump to rescind Bears Ears National Monument, the state of Utah immediately took an economic hit. The outdoor retailer show, which for 20 years called Salt Lake City home, decided to relocate in protest of the state's hostility to national monuments. This represented an almost $50 million in lost annual revenue for Salt Lake City and the surrounding area.
Utopia will return in a moment. Don't go away.